guys, tama yung ito guys.
Oh my God! Wow!
Ano ba hula? Ano magkamuto guys?
Damn!
Huwag mong subukan. Masisira ang buhay mo.
Kilala kong kaliskis mo, oy.
Flashback. End of flashback. Soon after montage. Yesterday, meanwhile, back in the lowlands. A few moments later, more moments later, later. What follows is a brief construction montage. Later, in the void. A little later, much later, much later, much later, much later, the following Thursday, later that same evening. Just then, by sheer coincidence, 12 o'clock midnight, 3:28 a.m., 7:59 a.m., 8:01 p.m., 10 seconds later, 12 seconds later, 1 minute, 37 seconds later, 2 very boring minutes later, 5 minutes later, 5 minutes later, 5 minutes later, 11 minutes later, 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, a few minutes later, a little longer than a few minutes later,
1 hour later!
1 hour later, 1 hour later, 1 hour later, 2 hours 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 later, 3 hours later, 3 hours later, 3 hours later, 3 hours later. 5 hours later. 346 minutes later. 6 hours later. 6 hours later. 6.5 hours later. 7 hours later. 8 hours later. 8 hours later. Approximately 10 hours later. Several song-filled hours later. Many hours later. Many unbearable hours later. Tomorrow for sure. 24 hours later. 24 hours later. Early the next morning. 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 The next day. The next day. The next day. The following day. Tomorrow. The very next evening. Day 2. 48 hours later. 2 days later. Day 3. 72 hours later. 3 days later. 3 days later. 3 days later. 3 days later. Day 4. 4 to 6.
Short passes that you mentioned, it becomes effective if the spacing is right. Right. Can't be too close. It's a waste of a pass, and one defender can guard two guys. So you gotta have at least 2 steps, 3 steps in between. At least. Back to a 12-point lead here for Meralco, 98-86. We are approaching the halfway mark of the fourth and final period. Alas, changing direction, throwing it up. He can just fabricate shots. Like he's playing horse on some of these shots. Honestly, you can do this too. And the thing is, the accuracy, it doesn't get affected now. You would think
Oh my God! Wow!
we are in the last few minutes of a very important game. And he can shoot those and shoot them with the best. Kevin has it. Aaron on him. Wayne. 7 to shoot. Flicks it to Tony. He goes in, air ball. Empty possession for Edmonds. Not the best shot attempt you would want. Inducing the left hand. That is strong. That is quick. That is amazing. What a great play by McDaniels. Set out for the reach the century marker up. Equally aggressive is Wayne Sullivan Jr. He's also gonna do some things I'm sure to improve his game. Maybe he can learn something from this guy right here. Daniels. He's a little heavy. Big. Spin away. Finish with the offense.
Damn!
5:54 now. Second one is also good. 188. And out by 12.
Oh my God! Wow!
Kyle stat sheet up. People gonna watch as well for Wayne Sullivan do something. That pass, a good block coming from Alas, preventing Black to enter the shaded area. See, look at that. Learning. Not able to complete the play. Well, they got numbers, 2 versus 1. Back to Black, coming from Alexi. Good finish. That's a big play. That's a very crucial play right there. Boiled on one end, there's the white shirts, and it leads to a 2-on-1 fast break, and they've really opened it up now. Up 14 with 5 minutes and 19 to go.
rise as one. As we rise as one. As we rise as one. As we
Damn!
rise as one. As we rise as one. As we rise as one.
Oh my god! Wow!
Remaining in the fourth and final period. And this gentleman here, Ali Maliksi, our lead up here in the game, brought to you by Firefly, the trusted lighting partner of the PBA. And he is lighting it up here at Full Sports. Yeah, when in doubt, you can lean on Maliksi. 16 points by more 3 assists, 3 out of 7 from 3-point land.